Again, as the title says, we're going to talk about 2021 GMA Safety and Liability Grant Overview. We're going to talk about the grant requirements and then safety action planning and loss analysis. We do have an action planning and safety loss analysis is going to be much more in depth. This is going to get a top view, but it will definitely just to talk about GMA grant results. This is the results we've had in the last few years. As of, again, 2020 had a very successful year. For GMA, we typically have a budget of $200,000. We actually requested, based on overages, $400,000, and we paid out $339,000. So that was good. And we had 65 grants paid out. Again, within work comp, WC, SIF, we had typically we have $300,000 budgeted. We requested $350,000, and we paid out $304,000. So over the last years, we've paid close to $2 million for both workers' compensation and government grants, almost $4 million total for both of those. So participant eligibility. So the current payment in contributions is static. That's been there for a long time. We have changed things up a little bit based on COVID and other issues. So again, participation by member employee in at least one LGRMS sponsored training program within the past year of the grant request. So the expectation is either you'll attend one of our regional training. We haven't been doing those because of COVID. So we do have a couple options that will allow you to meet that requirement. One is we have published a new crisis coordinator program. This is an online interactive training that you can take at your own pace. It's about 3.5 hours. A really fantastic training. I'd highly recommend you take it, whether or not you need that for a requirement. Then we have the other opportunity is attending 3 LGRMS webinars. The expectation, and you can use this webinar as one of those, is that you will attend and you'll pay attention, and then you'll write a 2 to 3 paragraph summary of what you learned from that particular webinar. So that is the expectation in regards to meeting that. Hopefully, by the end of the year, we'll be back to being able to provide regional training. But at this point in time, we don't have any plans on providing regional training. So those are the 2 options to meet that particular requirement. In 2020, because of COVID and because we didn't have a lot of things in place, we were very flexible in how you were able to meet that requirement. We probably will still be very flexible, but again, you should be able to meet those with the crisis coordinator training and the LGRMS webinars. We're doing a lot of different webinars, and there are a lot of opportunities to attend. Again, if applicable, current in responses to recommendations made by our LGRMS during on-site visits. Again, we haven't made a lot of on-site visits recently, but if you have on-site visits and there are recommendations that are made, you need to ensure that those are responded to. Those don't necessarily have to be completed, but you do need to have respondents saying you've looked at those, and then you have you're considered the resolution of those. I do have a question here. If we complete the crisis coordinator program, do we do the 3 webinars in addition? No, that is as an either or. You can just do the crisis coordinator training. If you do the crisis coordinator training, you do not need to attend the 3 additional webinars. I hope that answers your question. Again, a designated or specific person as a safety coordinator. Ideally, that's the expectation right now. Ideally, you would have somebody designated that is taking on this role. We don't want to have a safety coordinator that is a name only. The old joke within our office is the safety coordinator is the person that walked by the office on the wrong point in time and was appointed. We want somebody that has leadership skills and leadership ability, again, resources to do different things, manage different things. We want somebody that is going to be able to drive performance from a safety perspective, report things, be able to implement some of these different trainings that we're providing to them. They don't have to do all safety, and we'd actually not have them do that, but they need to have some level of responsibility rather than just designating somebody as a safety coordinator to meet this particular objective. It should be a substantive position, and that's what we look for. And then they have to complete safety coordinator module 1, 2, and 3. Again, the fact that they don't have to do that all in 1 year. They can do module 1, module 2, and module 3 in different years if they have not completed those yet, but within the first 3 years, that's the expectation. Again, we are a little bit flexible on that because we are not providing, we're doing an online version of safety coordinator training, but we have not done, that's safety coordinator module 1, but we have not done the same thing for module 2 and 3. We are currently investigating that, and more than likely, if the COVID restrictions aren't lifted, we will do that later on this year. Again, show proof of written policy on holding safety meetings and training. So you have to have a policy that says, and we have these examples. If you don't have those, let us know. If you've completed the grant last year or any time in the past and you've been approved, more than likely you have those already. But you need something in writing that you will conduct these safety meetings, that you'll conduct training. And again, within the next slide, we'll talk about written policy on conducting 2 safety inspections. If you don't have that, let us know. I can send you a sample language that will answer both of those particular policy statements, and you can put those within your policy and have those approved by your organization's leadership. Show proof of safety meeting training policy and safety inspection policy. So again, along with that policy, if you sent your policy in before, you don't necessarily have to send that in. We'll go through the checklist, but you do need to send in every year the fact that you are having those meetings and the fact that you have conducted those inspections. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later within the presentation. Again, show proof that there's a written mandatory seatbelt usage policy signed by the current mayor and our city administrator. And then if you have premiums over $100,000, then we would require you to do a safety action plan. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, again, how you can complete that. Questions, comments, anything else you guys would like to talk about before I go to the next slides? With that said, again, premium available or grant levels available, it really depends on your particular premium. Again, if you have premiums plus $200,000, you're going to be eligible for a $10,000 grant reimbursement. Again, all the way down to potential of $500. If, again, the examples I have here, the city of Happyville pays $330,000 in GRMA and $143,000 in workers' compensation. They would be eligible for $10,000 in GRMA and $7,200 in workers' compensation grant funds, again, based on the formulas of the previous page. The city of Partytown, which I've heard is a crazy place to live, pays $15,655 in GRMA and $3,655 in work comp. Again, based on the previous page, they'd be eligible for $3,000 in GRMA and $1,800 in workers' compensation, which still pretty good based on the premiums they're paying. The city of Cleanville, again, nice place, it's very shiny, $94,000 in GRMA, $58,000 in workers' compensation. They'd be eligible for $4,700 in GRMA and $3,000 in workers' compensation. Very simple formula. I can help you out. If you want specifics, what you're eligible, you don't know what your premiums are, send me an email and I will send you what you are available for you as members in both those particular pools. We do offer, again, from a GRMA grant, we offer a 25% discount for the cost of IT in a Box. That's an agreement. We've worked with IT in a Box. They do different services. We're going to be doing a couple different things, but we also offer, if you have cybersecurity training, you have other things, we'll probably pay 100% of that, because that's really getting at the risk. Our justification for 25% of IT in a Box, a lot of that stuff is administrative, doesn't necessarily get to the direct issue of cybersecurity. But if you have things that directly affect cybersecurity or social engineering, training, or systems, you may be eligible for 100% reimbursement of those particular costs. Again, program guidelines. The documented mandatory use guidelines, or SOPs, have to be signed by the department head and the mayor. So, for instance, you don't need SOPs for everything, but if you're buying big pieces of equipment that probably require some level of policy, then we would ask you to have those signed and verify that those are in use. For example, let's say you're doing trenching. That's a very, very hazardous activity. Requires, if you're outside of a city, requires you to be OSHA compliant. In order to be OSHA compliant, you have to have a policy. So we would require a policy on that. And the policy, again, it can provide you a sample policy that would say, okay, who's been identified as that? How are they, that is trench authorized? How are they trained? What kind of equipment do we have? What kind of process, what type of trenching do we do? All those things would be put within that particular policy. And again, I can provide a sample policy. Let's say you want an SCBA for your fire department, or an SCBA for your water treatment. Again, we'd be expecting a policy on those parameters around respirators also. I have a sample policy on SCBAs. I have a sample policy on respirator, as I have a sample policies on AEDs. Let's say you're going to get road barriers. We wouldn't require a sample policy on road barriers, on signs, things to that effect. It's really OSHA compliant equipment that requires policies. We'd want to see how you're going to be managing those pieces of equipment before you implement those within your organization. Again, grant funds will be distributed on the first come, first approved basis. So again, it's really about getting those in on a timely basis. We highly encourage you complete your application as quickly as possible, and you send those in. A lot of people wait until the last moment. They wait until October 31st. And every year at that point in time, we hold off on approving those because we don't have funds available. We go to the board, the GMA and Workers' Compensation Board, and they approve additional funds. At least they have for the last several years. But who knows what will happen in the future? Then there might not be funds available. So I'd highly encourage you to get those in. The grant opened on February 1st, and it closes on October 31st, which we talk about in the next piece down here. And again, the purchase must be made during the current calendar year. So we're looking for purchases made within 2021, between January 1st and December 31st. We have some flexibility on that, but that's really the expectation. Please avoid submitting multiple grant applications. You don't need to put multiple applications. We highly encourage you, if you have both workers' compensation and GMA insurance, that you sit down and you identify all the different items that you want to request at one time, and you submit those all at one time. The problem is, what happens is we want everybody, we'll talk about how we want it processed, but sometimes we have multiple grants from multiple departments. We don't know which one is which. It causes confusion. So if we have one grant from each particular city and or organization, it makes it simpler for us to approve and get that approval back to you. Here's a question. If I'm just starting this, will the city qualify for the 2021 grant? Again, we will work with you. And again, if it's your first time applying for the grant, we're a little bit more flexible than we have been with people that have been within the grant process previously. But more than likely, you would be approved for a grant if you met those expectations. There's nothing that you have there. So if you have if you have the policies in place, you're doing some of these different things, again, we provide some level of flexibility and you should be good to go. Let's see. Again, please avoid providing multiple grants. Grants must be signed by the mayor and top administrator. Again, the purpose behind that is really, and we'll talk about that again, is that we want one grant and one grant only. We don't want the fire department to provide a grant and then the police department to provide a grant. We don't want fighting at that level. We want you guys to organize those grants before they get here. It goes through one central location and then it's approved and sent to us. Again, procedures to request money. This isn't changed at all. It's same basic procedures. You determine you have a need that fits in the intent of the grant program, determine all requirements have been met, complete the application, gather the necessary documentation. I won't go through that because we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Submit it to that address, or we're going to talk really sending it to email, and the grant application a little bit different there, but really sending an email electronically is the best way to do that. And Courtney Stepter's email address is on the next couple of pages. That's really who you should be sending it to. Wait to receive confirmation, denial, or request for additional information, and Courtney will manage that. Grant funds will be leased upon final receipt of paid invoices and or bills. If additional information is requested, gather information, return to LGRMS. So especially with COVID, we're working out of our homes right now. It's incredibly better for us to do everything electronically than it is to do it via mail. We're going to the office once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks to get mail. If you send us stuff electronically to Courtney or myself, then we'll be much more responsive in regards to your questions. Again, program administration. We have basically a kind of a committee with people from GMA. I look at those and I'll go in and I'll recommend we approve or we don't approve based on past practice. And then those other two members will look at those items and or approve. And at that point in time, I'll send you an approval email, which we'll talk about a little bit. Again, the timeline typically takes 3 to 4 months, depending on the situation. And again, I've had grants where we've turned around payment within 2 weeks. If somebody is sending the application, it's pretty straightforward. It's on the cycle the same time that I get that I have meetings set up with that board for approval. I have it approved by them. I send out the approval email. They've sent in their grant. They've already purchased things. They send those back to me, and I process payment right then and there. So it's probably 2 weeks is probably the quickest time. I would say average somewhere around 3 months, but it based on different things. If you get your grant application in later on in the year, it will typically take until mid-December before I can send an approval letter. This is a change. This is the new application. So if you have not seen this before, I'm going to send out the new brochure when we send this out to everyone, when I send out the recording and link to this presentation. But this is the new brochure. And we're going to talk about how to fill it out and the rationale, the reason why we've made these particular changes. So the first piece, this is just breaking this brochure into segments, is the important instructions. Please complete only one application per member. Again, a reiteration of the point I just made. Applications can include both government and workers' compensation items. Again, one application. Please use your computer keyboard to accurately input all data requested below. All communications will be conducted via email. Data clarity and accuracy is critical to the swift approval of your grant. Incomplete applications may be sent back for completion. Click on the blue square at the bottom of the application page to access the content for these items. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Again, one application. You can handwrite these if you want. You can scan those in. You can mail those in if you'd like. We're still looking at those. but I would highly recommend that you use the fill-in location. It's going to make for clear. We have a lot of problems. We can't read names. We can't read email address. In order to communicate with you, we need to be able to have that information. So again, this is the next section of the application. You can fill in your legal member name. You can put in the city of Happyville or the Georgia Regional Treehouse Authority, whatever that might be. You're going to put in the application date. Now, the mayor or highest elected official, some locations don't have elected officials. So authorities, don't worry about that. You don't need to fill it out if you don't have a mayor or an elected official. But we want to be able to communicate with this person to let them know, hey, you have applied for a grant and you have been received. So when I send email approvals, I send those to the mayor of most cities that I have emails address. And the purpose by providing me with that email address, it makes it much more easier versus me having to search websites and search things. So it's an easier way for me to get that information out. And again, I'm going to transfer that this process probably to Courtney this year. She's going to have the ability to do that. So I want to make it easier for her. Again, city mayor or city manager or highest non-elected official information. So if you have somebody that's not elected, the city clerk, the city attorney, whatever that might be, then, and that's who it needs to be, we'd like to know that because we want to send the approval email to that person. Key grant contact. Again, this is really key because not only will we want your email address on there, clear email address, but we'll also want your phone number because if we have any issues, we have any questions, we'd like to be able to pick up the phone or send you an email to get response from that. So this one is critical. They're all critical, but this one especially with your phone number. And then your safety coordinator or anybody else that you would like to have included within the approval email. So if you have somebody else that's working on this or that maybe that helps with that particular role, put their name and their email address in there because we'd like to send that email to them also. Again, this is really mostly for approval emails. Again, designated safety coordinator. We really want to know the name and what their job title is, and then when they've received safety coordinator 1 training, safety coordinator 2 training, and safety coordinator 3 training. Just the dates. And we'll, again, if you've been approved previously, you probably don't need to send in any of this documentation. If you are a previously approved safety coordinator, if you're new, then I would send in your certificates of completion of that particular training. Again, below that is the, again, important instructions. Please complete the Excel template provided for all your requested grant items. I'm going to show that to you in the next upcoming slides. Please have your mayor or top administrator, executive director, print and sign their name below. So the expectation is they will have their name and signature below. Click on the blue square at the bottom, application to access the items requested Excel template. We're going to talk about that a little bit later also. And again, the signature is important. We want to make sure that the mayor has reviewed it or elected official or the top administrative person has reviewed this and is aware of the selections being made. Again, this is the application checklist. So by putting the check mark in this, you've sent your signed copy of the written policy for the seatbelt and distribution process. So if you've already done this in the past, we're going to accept it. But if you haven't applied for the grant previously, send your seatbelt policy and then a brief description of how this was distributed. How did you get this out to people? So we put this in our manual. Everybody that goes through any type of training has to review the manual. We put this in everybody's check, whatever that might be, but that's the expectation. We had a sit-down training and everybody was trained on how to do that. That's the expectation. Documented mandatory use guidelines or SOPs by the department manager or head. That's what we've talked about before. So trenching, a respirator, things of that effect. Member employees attended LGRMA sponsored training program within the last year. Again, if you've attended those webinars, you would print off the webinar registration, and along with the paragraph summary of those. If it's the crisis coordinator that you participated in, you'd print off the certificate for that. Question, seatbelt, if done before, doesn't have to be sent again. That's correct. If you've done the seatbelt before, we know you have it, so you would not need to send that again. Okay? Great question. I'm going to give you a gold star, Diane. Again, receipts, purchase order attached, you can put that in there. You don't necessarily have to do it. I would actually recommend you don't purchase anything or have any purchase order until the grant is approved. Again, you don't know what items are going to be approved, and it's for your own best financial benefit that you don't buy anything until it's already approved by the grant, if you're expecting or budgeting as far as it being reimbursed. If applicable, current in response recommendations, again, just check those. You don't have to send those in. Just check those, make sure your current have replied in a timely manner. Again, a copy of the properly signed written policy or safety meetings. Again, if you've done that before, you don't necessarily need to do it. Submitted safety meeting policy the previous year. You don't necessarily have to put that in there, but we do want to see proof or sample documentation of meetings. So if you've had meetings last year or this year, we want to see proof of that. So send signed copies, sign-up sheets, things to that effect. Again, if you've submitted things in the past, the copy of the properly signed policy, you don't have to submit that, but we do want to see proof of completed inspections. So we expect you to send that in. Again, designated safety coordinator current on attendance with safety coordinator 1, 2, and 3. Again, if you've sent those in previously, they've been approved previously, you don't necessarily have to submit that. We should be good to go. But if you have a person that's newly attended those, has new certificates, and you're going to expect that to be part of the meeting the requirements, send those in to us as part of the package. A list of all requested equipment and the expected costs, that's going to be included in the next couple phases that I'm going to show you how to do that. Only required for premiums over $100,000, and that's the action plan. We're going to talk about that. So with that said, again, I would highly suggest that you send you can send it to the LGRMS admin email, but I would highly suggest you send it to cscepter@lgrms.com. That's Courtney Scepter's email address. She's managing these programs at this point in time, and she's going to be able to get the best response. You can pick up again, she should be there at any time you need. You can call me, you can email me, and we'll be happy to get you whatever you need. I got a question here. What if the safety coordinator representatives has not attended those courses yet? Is there an expected timeline for those courses, or will it not be held against us? Again, right now we're doing webinars on Safety Coordinator 1. So if your safety coordinator has not attended any safety coordinator courses, then we would highly recommend they attend Safety Coordinator 1. If they've attended Safety Coordinator 1, then we will be flexible in regards to attending other courses. Typically, when we were doing live training, when it wasn't a COVID, we'd be doing 1, 2, and 3 in the fall, 1, 2, and 3 in the spring. And if you had taken course number 1, then you would be expected to take either 1 or 2, or 2 or 3 the next year, and so on the following year after that. Good question, though. Thank you. And here's the button that you push for the items. Again, I'm going to send out the actual spreadsheet. I think we sent that out with the original email. But if you click on that, that's a link to the spreadsheet that you can access to fill out your items requested. And again, this is different than we've done in the past, and we're trying to make it a little bit simpler for us and hopefully simpler for you. This is what that items requested for a reimbursement document looks like, and we're going to go through this piece by piece. Again, Important instructions. Please complete only one application per member. Applications can include both GRMA and workers' compensation items. Please use your computer keyboard to accurately input all data requested below. All communications will be conducted via email. Data clarity actually is critical to a swift approval of your grant. Incomplete applications may be sent back for completion. Again, would highly recommend that you use your computer to fill this out. There's no signatures needed on this. It's really just printing out the information, printing it off, scanning it, and then sending it in to us is really the expectation. Again, the more you do, the better it's going to be. I would actually, it's an Excel spreadsheet, so you don't even have to print it off. You can just send the electronic live version to us, then that'll actually be better, because then we'll be able to copy and paste things, make it more efficient on us. Again, we'd be looking for your city name or your formal name, the date of the application, and then the key contact, just like in the previous form. We want to know if we have a problem with this information, who do we need to call? There should be one central person that's kind of managing your grant process, and this is the person that we want to be able to pick up the phone, send an email to be able to get this information. Pretty simple in regards to what we're looking for. So this is just the spreadsheet. So it's already numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 in regards to items. You're gonna kind of guess what you'd like to determine what category this goes into. GRMA, work comp, both, or not sure. And it's not critical, but let's say that you have $3,000 to spend on work comp and $3,000 to spend on GRMA, and maybe you have a way that you think these things should be approved based on previous. This is a great way for you to use to really understand where they're going to go. This is a great way for us to know what your thoughts on where these items should go. So, for instance, body cameras, that would be a GRMA item. We'd want an explanation for that. How is that going to help reduce risk? It can be as simple as it will allow us to record the actions of our police officers. Again, that helps us know, helps us manage them. You don't need an exact cost. You can have an estimated cost, $2,000 or whatever you think it's going to cost. Doesn't need to be exact. You can put, again, I think there are line items for 20 different things on there. And again, if you have more, you can put more. But I would estimate if you have $3,000 to spend or $10,000 to spend on a particular grant item, I would put $15,000 worth of things, because we might disapprove something, and then you can prioritize it once it's approved back in your particular. You can take it back and say, okay, these items have been approved, and as long as we've approved it, we don't really care what the amount of money is. It's really up to you. So let's say you put $2,000 for body cameras, but you want to spend $1,000 for body cameras, you can do that. Or you want to spend $5,000 for body cameras, you can do that if you're approved up to $5,000 for GRMA or for GRMA. And then again, the next item is body armor. Again, that's a workers' compensation, because it really prevents injury to the officers. It will protect our officers from gunfire. Again, you can say $6,000, you can say $600, whatever you think that's going to cost. Again, road barriers and signage. Those are typically, we approve both of those on work comp and GRMA. Again, sand, not sure. We really need it. Really needing it is not a reason why we're going to approve it. It needs to be able to provide some rationale why you want that sand. We want sand because it will prevent workers' compensation injuries this way. We want sand because it'll prevent GRMA injuries this way, whatever it is. But you need GRMA claims this way, but you need to put down what your rationale is within that box. Let's see, again, workers' compensation or WCSIF approved items. Can the item requested reduce the risk of employee's injury or workers' compensation claim? If you can answer yes to that and how, more than likely it's going to be approved. I will try and get it to be approved. Again, you can do training videos, fees for attending safety courses, seminars, purchases, related services, and so on. All those different items. We'll talk about specific lists that will give you this information. Again, GMA or property and liability approved items. Can the items requested reduce the risk of a property and liability claim? If so, it'll likely be approved. So if you can answer, hey, this will help us reduce liability claims, or this will help us reduce property claims, and how, more than likely it's going to be approved. Again, training videos, fees for attending liability courses. We do exclude a couple different things within here, but again, certification fees we pay for, playground enhancements, and we'll talk about those lists a little bit later where you can find that. I'm going to send that later. Well, that's here. So I will send out with this training a list of specific items that have been approved in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean that they will be approved in the future, but for the most part, those things are. I did review those before I sent it out. So let's say eye wash extractor stations, or extract washer stations. That's for, it'll be approved under work comp. It's really a firefighter cancer issue, but it's approved for under work comp and GMA because we don't necessarily have a firefighter cancer grant at this point in time. You can just walk through all the items. If you have any specific questions, you can call me and I will help you out. Again, ineligible items, and this is something we've made a little bit of a change based on previous years. This grant will not cover personal protective equipment items. That's been in there previously, but this is not. PPE less than, and that's personal protective equipment, PPE, less than $20 per pair. So if you have items, gloves, or things that are PPE related that are less than $20 per pair, more than likely we will not approve those. So we want bigger items. We want items that are going to help you change or reduce claims. You know, ideally for workers' compensation, think big. Think, where have we had back injuries? Where have we had expensive claims? Where have we really had issues in the past? That's where we want you to spend your money. And I know that's sometimes difficult. Get your safety committees involved. Get your employees involved. Ask them how that would help them reduce costs. And we'll talk about those things a little bit later. Again, this is a typical email that's sent out. This was sent back in 2015, but Courtney will specifically send these out. And again, it'll say, hey, we reviewed your application and we need policy expectations for the safety meeting or training, or we need proof of that safety, whatever that might be. And that'll be done via email, and the expectations, you'll send those back, and we won't approve that grant until we get that information. This is an email that was sent out in 2021. And again, we want, as you can see within this, it's the approval email. Based on, to get reimbursed, we want you to provide a copy of the invoice for each approved items, marked paid. You can also provide credit card statements. You can provide paid invoices. You can provide a bill of sale, whatever that might be that you have. That will probably work. Don't necessarily have to provide canceled checks. We want something you can provide it with it, but we will like something that has a bill of sale or a PO that has specific line items for what has been paid. Again, this was new last year. Complete and include the proof of purchase reconciliation document. Here's the issue with that. Well, I'll send that Excel spreadsheet will be sent to you with the approval. The expectation is if you've approved or purchased $5,000 worth of items, we'd like you to line item those things on there. This helps us clear things out. In the past, people have requested, let's say, 42 different items, and they've sent me 200 different documents with those things, and I'll have to hunt and peck for those items to go through and find what is paid for and what is not. This document helps us clarify what you expect to get reimbursed for. So if you have a line item in there for $152 for a cone, I can go find that and mark that off of your proof of purchase documents. If you have a line item for $756 in body armor, I can go cross that off and move on to the next things. If not, it's a very time-consuming process, and then I have to go back and make sure you're okay with what we're reimbursing you for. So the expectation is really just to streamline things. Again, the next thing is these should be sent to LGRMS office via email or postmarked before January 15th, 2022. Again, we like to process these things within the year that they're purchased, and January of 2022 is the month that we have the ability to do that. So getting us your proof of purchase by then is critical. Within the approval letter itself, it will tell you in these two spots, this bullet point here and that down at the bottom, what your maximum grant level is for these particular items. You'll see that this is workers' compensation, and this is the GMA grant. And you can see within those particular items, let's say safe line body armor, that's $2,998. That's what it's at, $2,984.40 has been approved. That number means nothing in regards to what we'll actually approve at the end. We will approve any item that you have listed as safe line body armor or body armor. We'll give you a reimbursement for that. So if you send in a document for $1,000, we'll give you a reimbursement for that. Or if you send it for $3,000, we'll give you a reimbursement for that. If we've approved the line item, the dollar amount doesn't mean as much as the line item or general line item within that as possible. So this is, again, I want you to look at this, and this is the amount that we didn't approve. So the amount of $53 for the items listed below with not approved in the not approved column. And again, they're just not part of GMA or the workers' or the safety grant process. So this is caution tape, and for whatever reason, we didn't approve it in that particular this particular grant. Again, a copy of the invoice for each approved items marked paid. A cover letter should include the itemized list of approved items. Invoices, again, you can put this. If you put the reconciliation document, you should be good to go there. Again, we should receive that by the end of 2016 or January 16th, 2021. Questions, comments regarding the grant. We're going to go into the loss analysis and action planning process. Before we go there, anybody have any questions or comments? We got about 15 minutes left. So the action planning process is pretty simple, and I'm going to send that to you also. It's an Excel spreadsheet and it has these directions in there. We are generally looking for this document to include what departments do you have the most issues in? Within those departments, what are the biggest issues, and what do you want to do to help control those? Again, the more sophisticated, the more resources you are, the better your action plan should really look. Again, if you're a small kind of one-horse town, then you might not have the ability to do a lot. And we'd rather you just focus on one or two things to help review those things. And we're going to talk about the action plan. So this is the loss analysis that I will send you per request. If you send me a request, I'll send you this loss analysis. This first page, this is for work comp. We do both one for work comp and GMA. And based on where your losses are, you should request both and then put your action plan data based on where you think you have the biggest improvement. But within this, you can see the claims rate. You can see what departments they have and what their issues are. So this is, Parks and Recs has the biggest number, but the police department has the highest number of claims costs. You can see that again, same thing within here. Law enforcement ops is a big piece. Slips and falls is a big piece. This is analysis by cause. And then we go into the police department. You can see that the biggest issue is law enforcement ops, which we'll talk about there. motor vehicles is pretty small. What we do is ask you to look at, again, your loss analysis. You identify your top 2 departments, and then within each of those particular departments, you're going to find what percentage of issues are within there. And I'll also, based on your request, we'll send you a loss run that accompanies those loss analysis. So within this, any town, Georgia, the police department has about 36% of the work comp losses, about 44% of the property and liability or GMA losses. Public Works has 17% of the work comp and 10% of the property and liability or GMA losses. Again, within the city as a whole, ergonomic incidents are 33%, walking, working surfaces incidents at 24%, motor vehicle accidents are 19% of work comp and 17% of IRMA or property and liability. Police operations, which really would be within workers' compensation, altercations, foot pursuits. Within liability would be use of force, search and seizure, things to that effect. And then 17% on human resources or discrimination claims, benefit claims, things to that effect. So the action plan you would potentially focus on, again, if you had a few resources, you'd look at your police department. That's where you have the vast majority of your claims. Motor vehicle claims account for about 34% of the police losses and about 29% of the property and liability costs. So if I was going to develop an action plan, that is where my fish are, within motor vehicle claims, within law enforcement, and generally within GMA or GMA as a whole. That's where our biggest opportunities are. So they have a pretty good action plan here. The action plan is the expectation is they're going to communicate the target goals and the status. So they're going to set a goal within their department of accidents. So last year they had 12 accidents, and they're going to cut that in half down to 6 accidents this year. They're going to enhance their motor vehicle policy. And again, if you need a motor vehicle policy, we have sample policies that can help you do that. They're going to start investigating all motor vehicle incidents and looking at to determine the root cause and the corrective action needed. They're going to provide training to all their law enforcement personnel on proper motor vehicle operation. Again, that's something we can assist with, or you can do that independently. And then you're going to provide feedback during supervisor's overview. Now, again, all these things are good things, but let's say you only have the resources to do 1 or 2, that would be acceptable. The expectation is not that you're going to go out and solve world hunger, but you're going to do something to impact where your losses are. Providing training might be a small thing that you can do. But from my perspective, training alone doesn't really always solve motor vehicle accidents or any particular incident trend. It really, leadership is the key to reducing most causes. So any type of leadership focus on this, identifying a goal, measuring the goal, putting policies in place, putting the team in place to recognize those things. It's a much stronger approach to action planning. And again, as I said, we're going to do another webinar just on action planning. So if you're interested in that, please join us for that webinar. I'm not going to go through this. Again, the expectation is once you've completed the action plan, you're going to have your leadership approve and authorize that. We want that to be reviewed by the department manager. So if it's the police department, it'd be the police chief. If it's the fire department, it would be the fire chief. If it's public works, it would be the public works director and the city manager / mayor. The expectation is leadership will know you have an issue. This is where our trends are. And then leadership will know that this is the plan we plan to put in place to help reduce those trends. So I got a question here. What if your history is bad, but recent years is much improved? How do you keep improving? Again, there's always room for improvement in regards to what you're doing. And I would find where you have an opportunity. And that might be something it might not even be numbers based. Let's say we have a lot of members, even large members, that don't have many losses, but they know their risks are in a certain area. So let's say your loss trends say, hey, we have this is our biggest issue, but we've already controlled that. We've already put a policy in place to resolve that, or we've already done training and it's had a massive impact. Right now, we don't have any massive loss trends. What I would suggest you do is find a trend that you think is out there, that's hidden, that hasn't happened yet, something that you think that might be something big to happen. So for instance, we had a member, and this was on the county side, they had a recycling center. Within that particular recycling center, they would push the recycling material off the edge of this structure onto a truck. And within that recycling center, there was no railing system to prevent anybody from walking in that particular area. From my perspective, I thought that was a massive risk. You could go out and identify that as a risk and say, hey, based on our analysis, we know we have this issue here, but I think this is our biggest risk within, and this is the thing that we're going to focus in on for this year. You know your organization much more than I'll ever know it. You know the risks much better. You know the personnel much better. You know that what's going to work. On the same respect, let's say, and again, I'd say this more on the county side, let's say that the majority of your issues are within your sheriff's office, and you don't have a very good relationship with your sheriff, and there's not much cooperation with that particular sheriff. So more than likely, I would recommend if you're not going to have much cooperation and implement an action plan, focus on an area you think you're going to have a big impact. Again, it's different with the city. If you have a city manager or a city administrator, they should be able to enforce that within all departments across all lines. And again, the sheriff's office is a unique situation where they're constitutional elected officers. But I trust you. I think you typically know much better than I how to manage your area. And if you think you're putting time and effort into analyzing this, I would highly suggest you follow your own gut instinct. Again, in the development of the action plan, I would highly suggest don't do this in a bubble. If you're the safety coordinator, go do your analysis initially and then go meet with those department managers and say, hey, here's the issue. What can we do to help resolve this? That's really, we want their input. We want their feedback in regards to this. And not only just meeting with the department managers, meet with the team. Do a safety meeting and say, hey, we're having this many losses. What should we do to help reduce these losses? When you put that down to the frontline level, you're more likely to get a good response and a plan that's going to meet their expectations than coming up with something in your office and not rolling it across them. They're going to have more buy-in and it's going to be more likely to be successful. Any additional questions, comments? Well, I really appreciate your time. I thank you so very, very much. Again, if you ever have any questions, you can always pick up the phone, give me a call, probably calling me on my cell phone or calling me on my work phone. Either way, I'll return both those calls. More than likely, if you call me on your cell phone or on my cell phone, if I don't have your number, I'm not going to pick it up the first time, but leave a message and I'll call you right back. Same thing with my office. You can leave a message on my office number because I'm not there. I will see that via email and give you a call back shortly. So any other questions and or comments? Again, we do whatever we can to ensure your success in regards to this process. We want to see you get the money. We want to see you use this money for the benefit of your employees and for the benefit of your organization. So don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to see how we can assist you in moving things forward. Thank you so very, very much. Have a great day, and we will talk later.